Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for June 12th, 2025. Well, in the swirl of events, there are some things that you might have missed yesterday that I want to cover. Two in particular, which represent potential changes for the good, but also reflect the danger that we still have as the unipolar world disintegrates. And we're moving into an unknown period of transition, out of which we hope we can achieve a new strategic and development architecture. And that's what we're organizing for. So I'm going to focus on two of these developments. But in the background, keep in mind the expose of the British role, the City of London role, MI6's role in organizing a world of war, using the classic geopolitical doctrines of the beginning of the 20th century to pit countries against each other to prevent an emergence of a new strategic architecture. So the two events from yesterday, let me refer you to a very shocking video released by Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. And secondly, the signs of a potential coming showdown over Iran, even as President Trump seems to be trying to move away from that. So again, the background to this is the recognition that there is a war party, not just by us, but by leading figures who are coming out identifying the role of the British. And I'm not just talking about the Russians, but I'm talking about the emergence of other voices, ranging from people such as the podcaster Judge Napolitano, Scott Ritter, Ray McGovern, and others. So let's start with the Gabbard video. Now, Gabbard, as you probably know, is the Director of National Intelligence. She's the one who reviews the daily reports that come in from the various intelligence agencies. Her nomination was an indication by President Trump that he wanted someone who was not a war hawk in that position. And that's why there was so much opposition to her. Now, when you watch this video, and it's going to be linked in the description section, you'll see why they wanted to keep her out. She describes a recent trip to Hiroshima in Japan, the scene of the first nuclear bomb strike in August 1945. And she talks about the horrors of what she saw, what it did. She talks about how the bombs today, the nuclear weapons today, are much, much more powerful than the ones used in Japan. The difference being between 15 kilotons of TNT equivalent with the Japanese bombs, the bombs used against Japan, compared to a megaton today of TNT. Now, in talking about this, and you'll see the genuine horror she experienced when having a first-hand view of what happened there. She then refers to those she calls the political elite warmongers, who she accuses of carelessly fomenting fear and terror between nuclear powers. Now, who is she describing? She's describing exactly the forces we've been talking about. The narrative controllers of the media, the intelligence community war hawks, the war parties in the various governments in Europe and in both parties of the U.S. Congress, typified by people such as Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, who were recently in Kiev to urge on the Zelensky group to keep fighting. And in describing them, she mentioned something crucial, that clearly they believe they and their families will be protected in a nuclear war because of their ability to have access to nuclear shelters. In concluding, she calls for the citizens to speak up, demand an end to this madness, she says. Watch her video and take her advice. She's right. She's repeating things that we've been emphasizing in recent years. Having her as the Director of National Intelligence instead of a war hawk such as John Bolton or Mike Pompeo may be the difference between survival and destruction. And again, keep in mind that the people that she's talking about, the warmongers, are the ones who tried to keep her out and the ones who are continuing to run a campaign of sabotage against Trump. I'm not saying Trump is doing everything right, but on the war question, he seems to be moving in the right direction. And this horrifies those people who supported Bush Jr., Obama, and Biden and the war party in the United States. Now, secondly, in the Middle East, Benjamin Netanyahu's in trouble. His coalition has been identified as committing war crimes. Netanyahu is reviled by a whole section of the Israeli public, which blames the intelligence failure of October 7th on him, and which believes his commitment to continuing the war has nothing to do with saving hostages or Israeli lives, but has everything to do with saving his political career. And they're right about that. That's why he wants to continue the war and why he's looking to extend it into a war against Iran. Now, the backing for Netanyahu comes from the crazies, the Greater Israel expansionists, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, Israel Katz, and others, who are committed to an ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, which is in itself a war crime, in order to have more land for Greater Israel. Now, unfortunately, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, came out more or less endorsing this by saying that the Palestinians should leave. Why do they have to live in Palestine? What he calls Judea and Samaria, referring to the biblical name that the Christian Zionists and the radical extremist settler movement call Israel. In other words, Huckabee said it. He said there's no such thing as Palestinians. It's an artificial construct designed to carry out attacks against Israel. So the danger is that as his coalition is weakening and threatened with loss of the government, he may move preemptively with the intention of forcing Trump to support Israel in a war for survival. Trump seems to be working for an agreement with Iran. He goes back and forth. One day he says no enrichment of uranium. The next day he says, well, they could use it for civilian purposes and so on. But in the absence of an absolutely clear warning from Trump that if Netanyahu continues the war in Gaza and targets Iran, that Netanyahu will lose completely military, financial, and political support from the United States. Unless he says that, he leaves the room for Netanyahu to launch strikes and attacks that will lead to a danger of nuclear war. And the anti-Trump forces are mobilizing to use Iran as an enemy image to force Trump to remain committed to wars. Now, there was a good sign. Some of the worst of the war hawks from the State Department and Defense Department and National Security Council have been removed in the last days, and we'll have a full breakdown of that over the next couple of days. But Iran right now seems to be the one area that they're going to use as a way of breaking the fight for peace from Trump. Now, meanwhile, the killing in Gaza continues, along with an escalated drive to use the settlers movement to drive Palestinians out of the West Bank. And one final note, Donald Trump announced yesterday a new deal with China. We'll see, but that's good news because the same war hawks that insist on continuing the war against Russia and Ukraine want to start a war against China in the Pacific. So let me conclude by reminding you, watch the Gabbard 3.5-minute video. It's very powerful, very direct. Watch it and spread it. It's extremely important. And when she says it's up to us, the people, who do you think she's referring to? She's referring to all of us. And finally, watch the dialogue I did with Helga Zepp-LaRouche yesterday, where she once again demonstrates the combination of political intelligence and philosophical solutions that are necessary to break the power of the war hawks. The two are appended, are linked in the description section, the Gabbard video and Helga's video, the Zoom call from yesterday. And then tomorrow, there will be the next meeting of the International Peace Coalition. So we're moving. We've got a conference coming up in mid-July in Berlin. We're moving our forces to put the world back on track toward peace, sustainable peace, based on a new security and development architecture. So thanks for joining me.